The Axis powers of World War II were led by Germany, with Japan as a close ally. What few are aware of, however, is that right before that war broke out, the Germans were actually engaging in vicious combat with their future partner. Allied with the Chinese to defend continental China from Japan and from multiple warring factions within the country. Famous generals such as Alexander von Falkenhausen courageously fought against Japanese aggression before they ultimately joined forces in 1937. China held out hope that Germany would send reinforcements, but they never came. Instead, von Falkenhausen was ordered back to Germany, but not before leaving secret plans for the Chinese to defend against Japanese invasion. Unlikely partners. Even though China never sent troops into battle during World War I, during the conflict the country declared war on Germany in hopes of seizing some regional control from Japan after the Japanese attacked a German overseas naval base located on the Shandong Peninsula in China. In the aftermath of the Great War, China refused to sign the Treaty of Versailles because it gave the former German holding of Shandong to Japan. Germany and China instead had to find peace through the bilateral agreement regarding the restoration of the state of peace between Germany and China. It followed most of the elements detailed in the original treaty, but without any sort of acceptance on China's behalf about who owned Shandong. This opened the door for the two nations to collaborate with each other in the future. Because the Treaty of Versailles constrained what Germany could do with both its army and its industry, private companies sought alternative partners outside of the West to sell them military hardware, technology, and machinery. China became a prime land of customers with the fall of the Beiyang government, when legitimate Emperor Yuan Shikai passed away, and multiple army factions arose to compete for territorial control during what is known as the Warlord era. Imports of machinery and weaponry boomed, with the Chinese modernizing their arsenal through American and German-produced arms. 15 different factions formed between North and South China, with everyone vying to get hold of Beijing, since that would grant international recognition for the faction as the ruling power. One of the warlords, Zhang Zulin, assembled a personal air force, purchasing around 100 aircraft. The Chinese warlords also began to hire foreign military advisors, fearing not only each other, but the more organized Kuomintang party movement led by Generalissimo Sun Yat-sen, who had been president of the First Republic of China before resigning and letting the now-defunct Yuan Shikai rule. Kuomintang. The Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party of China, had the goal of unifying China and modernizing it. With help from the Soviet Union and an alliance with the Chinese Communist Party, the party launched an offensive against the warlords in northern China. The Kuomintang was mostly successful, but its leader, Sun Yat-sen, passed away in 1925 from liver failure and was replaced by Chiang Kai-shek. In 1928, only a handful of small warlord holdouts and Zhang Zulin, the man with the personal air force, remained to be defeated. Understanding that their joint goal was nearly complete, the Communist Party became a new threat to the Kuomintang. In June of that year, Zhang was killed in the bombing of an armored train, possibly carried out by the Japanese Kwantung Army. He was succeeded by his son, who surprisingly formed an alliance with the Nationalist Party. Aside from purchasing German firearms, the party also wanted German support and expertise. Since Germany had been weakened by the conclusion of World War I, it no longer held colonies in China, and it had no political pursuits in regard to the nation, unlike the Soviets and the Communists. This turned an unlikely partner into an ideal one. Chiang Kai-shek had hopes that the unification of his nation could mirror German unification, and Germany became a key player in the eyes of the Kuomintang. Chiang Kai-shek was further driven towards a German partnership by his friend Chu Chihua, who had studied in Germany and was now president of the Sun Yat-sen University. German advisors. First, Chu Chihua reached out to General Erich Ludendorff, who had won the very first battle of World War I, the Battle of Liège. Unfortunately for Chiang, the general declined out of fear that his renown might attract unwanted global attention. He had more luck getting Colonel Max Hermann Bauer on board, a protege of Ludendorff who had worked extensively with artillery and followed the philosophy that, quote, to govern is to dominate. Colonel Bauer visited China and then returned in 1926 with a team of 25 Germans to serve as a military advisory board for Chiang Kai-shek. A total of 47 German militants ended up training and advising the Kuomintang army. The majority of these advisors were retired German officials, privately hired civilians who did not represent the German government in an official capacity. This allowed the Germans to get involved since technically Germany wasn't selling weapons or providing military assistance, private citizens were. Even under these conditions, Colonel Bauer ordered his men to avoid or circumvent journalists and diplomats. The The colonel also helped Chiang buy weaponry directly from German manufacturers. However, German companies barely got to savor the incoming money from their new clients when Bauer was taken by smallpox in Shanghai on May 6, 1929. He was replaced by a colonel who clashed with Chiang and was therefore replaced by General Georg Wetzel. The Shanghai Incident. Georg Wetzel helped the Kuomintang fight the communists and aided General Ling during the January 28th incident, or Shanghai War of 1932. The conflict started with some boycotts and riots targeting Japanese businesses in the area, and continued with Japan demanding compensation and condemnation from Shanghai's municipal council. A Japanese aircraft attacked Shanghai in what some considered to be the first bombing of civilians in the modern era. Conflict escalated, with the hired Germans fighting against the Japanese for the first time, until the League of Nations brokered the Shanghai ceasefire agreement between the two parties. Yet another German officer joined the fray after Wetzel. General Hans von Seeckt oversaw the complete overhauling of the Chinese armory, using his connections to ensure that China bought the latest war equipment from German companies. It's been estimated that 60% of the war material used by the Chinese at that point in time had a German origin. The final leader of the advisory board was Alexander von Falkenhausen, a general who was displeased with Hitler's government and was better suited to foster Sino-Germanic relations. 1937 Marco Polo Bridge Incident. Hitler's regime stood divided on the subject of the Chinese. Joseph Goebbels was pro-China, while Hermann Göring saw more potential in the Japanese, particularly because of their anti-Soviet agenda. Tensions between the two Asian nations kept escalating, but China continued to have internal conflict. Chiang sent the young Marshal Zhang Suiling, son of Zhang Zuolin, to kill all communists. Instead, the young marshal kidnapped Chiang as part of a ploy with communist spokesman Zhao Enlai to settle a truce between the nationalists and communists. In turn, Chiang arrested the young marshal upon his own release. In the meantime, Falkenhausen continued to train around 80,000 troops spread across 8 divisions as part of an elite force for the Kuomintang. These forces, however, were not ready to fully face the Japanese, which they were forced to do, beginning with the Marco Polo Bridge incident. By the time July of 1937 rolled in, Japan had an excess of troops in China, supposedly there to protect goods transported by railway. For reasons unknown to this day, soldiers of these two nations exchanged fire outside of Wamping, a town near Beijing. Reinforcements arrived, and the Chinese shot at the Japanese over the Marco Polo Bridge, giving the conflict its name. Among the dispatched troops was the 88th German Train Division. Falkenhausen objected to that move, but Chiang insisted and lost a third of his elite force to that decision. The incident ended in a ceasefire that failed to persist, effectively marking the start of the Second Sino-Japanese War, and to some, the start of the Second World War. The German general continued to provide advice as to how to strategize for a long-term fight with the Japanese, such as establishing guerrillas behind Japanese front lines, using strategic fortifications, withdrawing the elite force from the capital temporarily to fight off a war of attrition, and temporarily giving up territory. In his own words, quote, "As private citizens in Chinese employment, there could be no question of leaving our Chinese friends to their fate. Therefore I assigned German advisors wherever they were needed, and that was often in the front lines." All German advisors and soldiers survived their involvement. Not a single German death was reported. Nanjing. The Japanese prepared to attack Nanjing, the capital of China at the time. Chiang summoned Falkenhausen and his Chinese generals to strategize. Falkenhausen and 2 of the generals agreed that the best move was to declare Nanjing as undefended, taking away any incentive to attack it. Chiang listened to another of his advisors, General Tang, and chose to make a stand. A proposal was drafted, offering to have a neutral zone, which would have included Nanjing, but it was rejected by the Japanese. General Tang announced in a speech that the city would be defended, regardless of the cost. He assembled an army of unprepared, untrained men and veterans from the previous conflict in Shanghai. Chiang fled the capital with his elite force. In his diaries, John Rabe, a German industrialist residing in Nanjing who led an international committee that essentially became the authority responsible once Chiang Kai-shek abandoned his capital, reveals how he felt after listening to Tang, quote, "He's a general, of course, and so has to make warlike noises, but it's not appropriate in the present case, especially since the city cannot be effectively defended. Sitting in this crook in the Yangtze is like sitting in a mousetrap." Rabe pleaded with both the Japanese and Chinese for a ceasefire that would save Nanjing. Chiang did not agree to it. Both Germans had been right. Defending Nanjing was fruitless. The Nanjing massacre took place over 6 weeks in December of 1937, resulting in total destruction. The end of cooperation. John Rabe aided the wounded victims of Nanjing while displaying his swastika armband. He hoped with all his heart that Hitler would respond by asking the Japanese to halt their attacks on China. No such thing was to happen. The massacre suggested to Hitler that the Japanese forces were superior to the Chinese, yet the Germans still participated in one more battle against the Japanese. During the Battle of Tairzhuang in 1938, Chinese troops confronted Japanese troops at Shantung. The Chinese battalion commanders were all German and used howitzers to defeat the Japanese at night. That was the last time the Chinese and the Germans would fight a battle side to side. The Third Reich allied itself with the Empire of Japan. It granted recognition to the Japanese satellite state of Manchukuo, established within China. Additionally, Hitler ordered all German Chinese supporters back to the homeland at the request of Japan. Falkenhausen's family was reportedly threatened, so he would resign from his post by Chiang's side. The German general had to resign, but he refused to give away any Chinese military secrets or the battle plans he devised to either the Japanese or his own nation. The Second Sino-Japanese War and the Sino-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact was to end all further Sino-Germanic cooperation.